Welcome to the Creators Toolkit.
I'm Yanni Blue from Bigger Than Our Dreams.
And I'm Mike Brown from The Art of Letting Go. This podcast series is inspired by our second annual Merch Madness contest, where we will be exploring entrepreneurship for creatives and community building in the digital era.
That's right. And in this season, we share our personal journeys of building brands and creating merch. We'll also be sitting down with fellow artists, branding experts, and fashion professionals, all while competing to see who sells the most merch in the month of March.
We're excited to dive into the tools, techniques, and strategies that can help you succeed as a creator in today's fast-paced world. So, welcome to the Creators Toolkit. All right, we are back with episode 2 of the Creators Toolkit. Yanni Blue, how are you feeling?
Creative. How are you feeling, Mike Brown?
After these internet struggles, I'm feeling nervous of if it's going to cut off, but you know what? We're here. I'm excited. I am feeling more tapped into this entrepreneurial journey as I'm applying for these jobs and continuously getting rejected or no response at all. It's really feeling like a sign from the universe to really focus on my shit.
Man, I second and third and fourth that, because being on the other side of it and having a job and kind of getting tossed around, I'm feeling like I'd rather kind of go work for myself. So I'm really happy we're doing this because I think we're both being reminded that we got some really cool ideas and really cool products and things that we want to bring out into the world. And the more we can arm ourselves with tools and arm other people with tools, the better, because I think more people deserve to work for themselves and make cool shit.
Yeah. I agree. I did. And we just finished up Merch Madness. That was our merch initiative, which for me really felt like a springboard into focusing on selling merch and being more confident in it. And I just wanted to know, how did you feel about Merch Madness from your perspective?
I feel like I started off really optimistic, and I think that's because I had such a good time doing it last year. And somewhere around the middle, I didn't lose my optimism, but I did start to your point, start to look further out. You know, it wasn't so much about the month anymore for me as it was, how am I going to make this make sense long term? And when that shift started to happen, I got excited in a different way. Like, I wasn't as enthused about creating the content or trying to push every day for Merch Madness, but what I was really becoming passionate about was like, what are these products that are going to be evergreen, that are going to sell long term, and where are the places that I can do that? So I think that's kind of been my journey with Merch Madness. Like, coming out of it, I'm really in the mindset of, how can I do this shit full time now and not just for a month?
Yeah. Merch Madness was kind of all over the place for me. Uh, I don't feel like I was as invested as I was last year. And I think having a lot of the same designs to push and only doing t-shirts, last year, I'm just reflecting on it right now, but a lot of my merch was sweatshirts, mugs. I was selling a whole lot of different products, tote bags. Like, all of these were products that were moving for me, and only moving with t-shirts. I feel like, and the same t-shirts, it was a little harder to move product this year. And just the reality of just life, being in a place where like life is really moving, and I want to focus here, but also I have so many, and I think the best word to use is distractions, to distract me from focusing on what I said I wanted to do. So it's like being caught up in the job hunt, being caught up in, whatever, thing I want to say stop me from doing it, was really just a distraction. So I think I allowed myself to be distracted this year. And yeah, I think the proximity of accountability probably made it a little harder for me as well.
I agree. I think it was a lot more sorry, I felt a lot more fun last year because I think we had more product on hand and we were there in physical to encourage each other and kind of push each other through. And I think this year we took a couple of risks coming into it. We tried a different site out. We tried Etsy out. Um, we also tried to do the Kanye West everything one price model. Running just shirts at $30. And then we also tried, or at least I tried, running some ads to see what kind of traction that would create. So it was a lot of moving parts. And I mean, the verdict's still out on what was successful and what wasn't. But honestly, the most successful part of the month has felt like having these conversations because I've learned so much from the people that we've been talking to, and just their mindsets and why they sell merch and how. So that's honestly been the most productive part for me. But we definitely, I mean, we swung big. I'll give it to us. And we definitely had some new products. You had the My Price is My Price. So we had some new products, but yeah.
Yeah. What was your biggest challenge during Merch Madness?
My biggest challenge I think was the content component because we were going to post every day, and I think around week 2 or 3 it just didn't start to feel it started not to feel productive. I wasn't as enthusiastic about the content. It wasn't really connecting, and yeah, that kind of became the hardest part. And hardest just in the sense of like I got bored doing it and I just stopped. I didn't commit to it. I ended up kind of switching to running an ad on my last post and just trying to find the fun in it, um, which was a little bit easier last year.
Do you feel like the ads worked for you?
It's really hard to tell. It's really hard to tell because in addition to switching to an Etsy store, I also switched my website to Squarespace. So it's been hard to kind of see where the traction has gone because I launched my site on March 1st and then we kind of pushed. So I was, and that's probably something that I wouldn't do going forward. Like I probably, or maybe I should, and maybe that's something we should ask people. But my merch was in multiple places. So um
And I guess what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I drove the ads to the different sites, but I can't really gauge if they were successful or not outside of like the Instagram vanity numbers, the views.
So that leads me to my next question, which is what was your measurement for success? Like how did you, because I know you say you didn't know if they were successful or not, but what was your measuring system to know what success would look like?
For me, I went into this month hoping for volume and sales. So that was my measurement of like, are people buying it? And then also what people are buying it. Is it just family and friends again, or is it people from my extended network? Those were the things that I was really looking for. And I didn't get much of that. Like I didn't sell a ton. And the people that did make purchases were like my immediate family and friends. What about you? What were your measurements coming in?
Um Honestly, I felt like I had a blind measurement with no real system behind it. So, I set a number of, I want to make 50 sales, but what was the track to get me to that? Like what were the steps that were going to get those 50 sales? And I didn't have those in place. So I didn't make the 50 sales. And um just being honest with myself, and I'm not even to compare it to last year. Just looking at this year, I didn't feel successful about Merch Madness, and not to say I'm not taking that as a bad thing. Not feeling successful is just being honest. Like this was one of those ideas that didn't work, and but now it gives me something to work towards. Like it kind of set like I said, it was the springboard. So it set a standard of, okay, with this level of commitment, this is what you're able to do. And with this level of strategy. So now going into the next one with more commitment, more strategy, you should be able to do more. So that's kind of how I looked at it.
What do you feel was your focal point this year as far as the merch that you decided to push and the why? And I ask that because as we get into other episodes, we'll hear people like Ryan who talks about like how her stuff is very intentional, and we speak to people like Christoph who's a little bit more business minded. So what do you think, where do you think you fell when it came to the merch that you were pushing?
Um, I think I failed in putting out more ideas, like new ideas. Like I said, I did this whole run last year with the exact same shirts, and if my audience is pretty much the same audience, I honestly haven't measured my audience growth in the past year. So, if I haven't grown that much in audience, it's pushing the same product to people that already have it. So I will say, as far as like the intention, I'm very intentional with everything that I do, everything I create. Like I never just throw stuff out into the world just to say I'm doing something. Like I'm very intentional with what I do. So I do feel like the intention was there with the product. Like for me, I always look at anything as would I use this? Would I do this? So if I'm putting out a t-shirt, it has to be something that I will wear. If I'm putting out a podcast, a song, it has to be something that I would listen to, or because if you do it for any other reason, what are you doing it for? Um, but yeah, I think I failed in the sense of my consistency, and also my direct marketing. I think I think for me, just what I learned, and that's why I'm approaching differently in promoting this podcast is just throwing stuff out into the world, like just kind of throwing stuff on social media. Now I wasn't intentional about that at all. Well, actually, you know what? I take that back. The post that I did put out, I was intentional, um, but I wasn't putting them out as frequently as I did last year. But the ones that I did get out, I did put intention behind them. But I've learned in my journey that direct marketing works better than just the general putting it out on social media, like hitting people with hand to hands, like passing a flyer out to somebody. I mean, this phone is a digital flyer. Like, you send somebody a text, you send somebody a DM, like that's like handing them a flyer in public. So I'm just kind of tapping back into the roots of the way I learned how to do things. I used to intern for a local record label in New Orleans, and I used to have to do that. I used to have to pass out the flyers hand to hand. I used to have to pass out the party flyers hand to hand. So, you know, this is in your hand 24/7. So I'm using this as a tool this time around.
I don't like that. Yeah, I agree on all of that. I mean, I think I do feel like I was very intentional with the products that I created, to your point, and I made things that I really liked and that I felt I put real heart into what I wanted them to mean to people, and things that I just felt looked cool. So I'm proud of that. And yeah, I think just being a little bit more consistent in whatever the push is doesn't necessarily mean posting every day, but like just figuring out what that push looks like. And I'm excited to figure that out because I do want to I want to hit my stride with it, whatever that's supposed to be. I would like to hit my stride and figure out how I best connect with the world when it comes to selling my art.
That's cool. So we are clear that we are extending the merch push. And in that, as you see on Yanni Blue's shirt, I don't know where I'm pointing. I don't know if it's up to the left, down, but on Yanni Blue's shirt, that is there a name for it?
I don't know. It's Yanni Blue hoodie.
Okay, there's a Yanni Blue hoodie, and there's this rated artist shirt that I have on that is available now that you can purchase on yanniblue.etsy.com. So again, we are still pushing merch. We should have some new stuff coming soon. We're gonna take on some of these ideas that our guests share with us. So, I think we already started with what Rio shared by just tapping into our backgrounds and really using that to be unique with our merch. I would love to look into what Sad Boy shared as far as the Amazon stores, and I'm looking forward to what Christoph shares with us today.
Yas, same.
So without further ado, let's get into the episode.
Mike and I were both honored to receive a grant at the end of last year from the Poet Life. Through this grant, we were empowered to create art that shed light on tobacco use in Black communities. This grant not only fueled our creative endeavors, but it also helped us connect with Christoph Jenkins, who is the visionary behind the Poet Life. Christoph's approach to branding and merchandising is bold. He's fearless in integrating creativity into a realm that often avoids overt consumerism. During our conversation, Christoph shared the genesis of the Poet Life and his philosophy on affecting change through merchandise, demonstrating his commitment to advocacy alongside commerce.
With your merch, do you sell it? Like as far as like your branded clothing, do you sell it or is it mainly for brand awareness?
So I'm glad you asked that, man, because at the moment I'm focused on the clientele. That is where the bulk of our income comes from, our clientele, the organizations and people that we serve. And so, well, backstory. The Poet Life started as a clothing line, right? So it was Poet Life gear. And I started with like 12 snapback hats that said Poet Life on the front of it. And was going to the poetry events and selling my hats there because ultimately I wanted to make sure poets had a uniform. You know what I mean? Like I I got a little tired of seeing poets just get up there and perform in anything. You know what I mean? And I'm all about um, professionalism, because if we're trying to take it there, then we have to present and act the part. You know what I mean? It's a whole different ball game when I'm sharing my art and I'm also wearing my art. Right? And so what I'm sharing or what I'm saying um, just is taken to the next level. If you see somebody performing and they're killing it, and they're also wearing a T-shirt that says one of their lyrics on their shirt, or it says something about poetry, it's like, oh man, they're taking this serious, right? And so that was the mindset as it relates to why I started Poet Life Gear. Um, but I was also running a nonprofit called Fighting Cancer with Poetry, and so it was just perfect to have a clothing line to push the poetry, because again, like you said, it served as the merch for Fighting Cancer with Poetry as well. But then I got into it more and I saw the different needs in, or the different voids in poetry that I started to fill. And that's when we went from Poet Life Gear to overall the Poet Life.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. You're actually the second person we've talked to who has talked about how merch for them and merchandising was more of a intentional thing and a purposeful thing than just trying to make money. So to hear you say that, like, I wanted to represent what I was doing and it kind of took on a life of its own is really cool, because a lot of people just kind of turn to merch as another way to make money, but you actually had some real intention behind it, and the fact that it redefined your brand on the other side is really cool, just to see that it kind of became so much bigger than what the organization was called and becoming the name of it. That's really dope.
Yeah, yeah. But at the current state, that's what we're trying to get back into, to go from just having some t-shirts and stuff like that. We're trying to get back into, now that the brand is becoming international and people are actually listening to our message as far as poetry and business. We are now seeing the merch as the uniform for the movement. You understand, right? So if they're buying in to the message, then they would also buy into the merch as well. So we're gearing up to start dropping some new stuff.
I was actually just gonna ask you from there with the clothing, how did you end up getting into books? Because I see that you guys have the books and the journals, and how have those performed for you?
Good question. So I'm a person of timing, and being a poet, being a writer, being an entrepreneur. For me, I wasn't getting into the realm of, because I'm a poet, I need a poetry book, and then end up with boxes of poetry books as an inventory, and I'm not selling them. You know what I mean? Like, and that is the norm that I'm finding because we teach poets around the world how to create a career with their poetry. That's what I'm finding. They're like, yeah, I wrote 9 poetry books. I'm like, okay, how many do you have in your basement? And they got boxes upon boxes of poetry books. And so my question is always, so why did you write it? Why did you? Because that basically that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to, but the question is, have you created the demand for the book, right? So if you create the demand for the book that you write and publish, you wouldn't even have to sell it. You would simply have to present it and say, I wrote a book, y'all need to get it. And that be you understand what I'm saying? So for me, it was time for the book. And notice I didn't write a book, I wrote a workbook, because again, I'm gonna keep saying for me, because to each his own. I want people to, yes, be inspired, but I want to inspire you to move, right? And to take action. And so I thought it would be better to have a workbook, because you can't buy the book and not do the work. But you can buy an actual personal development book and still not do the work and just be motivated. So in everything I do, I try to be as intentional as possible. And I knew that a journal would be a great supplement to the workbook.
I think when you say that, it makes me think of, because poetry obviously and songwriting are not much different, and I know that for people who are in these art forms that can feel kind of intimate to us, it might feel a little cringy to build a business around it. Obviously, it doesn't sound like that was too much of a struggle for you, but obviously you work with other poets, so people who are apprehensive about, like, how do I brand this into merch or into a logo, what kind of advice do you give them to kind of get out of their heads?
Get out of your head, mainly because no, because that when I first started and I was talking this language, that was the consensus. Yeah, man, this is a sacred art form, and we shouldn't bring capitalism, and all of that talk. I heard that from top to bottom, left and right, but then they'll also say, well, I'm not making money with my poetry. Well, which one is it? Right? Which, all right, okay. Do you not believe in capitalism? Uh, do you not want to make money with your poetry? You have to choose, right? So and here is the herein lies the problem. In the statement that there's no money in poetry. It's been said that there's no money in poetry mainly because we've only spoken of poetry to be a community. Understand? So there is no money in a community. If you think about where you live, most people leave where they live to go work into an industry. Got it? The only people working and making money in a community are landscapers, just cutting the grass, and right? So that's why poets couldn't find the money in poetry, because it's only been a community. When rap started, it was the rap community, right? And someone said, the forefathers of poetry said, I mean, of rap said, we need to, like, this is valuable. We need to, like, make this official. This needs to be an industry. And that's when they started making money. And that's why rap is everywhere around this planet. And so can poetry, if the poets started to take responsibility of their own art and take it seriously and go from a hobby to an actual business. That's the only way you can do more with your poetry, is the only way you can create a career with it, is for it to be a business.
How has having merch impacted the success of the Poet Life?
Mm. You know, because we haven't really pushed it like that, like a clothing line, it's not so much monetarily, but when you get tagged in photos, or when you see somebody at the airport with a Poet Life shirt or a Poet Life hat, that representation is different, right? And you want more of that dopamine of seeing somebody in your brand apparel, rocking, we call it rocking the Poet Life. And that alone gives your brand major exposure. So it's the exposure aspect, because it's not just you wearing it, it's other people saying, I support this.
Before we ended our conversation with Christoph, we asked him what advice did he have for creatives who were trying to expand in their merchandising, and this is what he had to say.
Have something of value, have a message and a cause. Yeah, ultimately have a message. Have a message that you're pushing, that people can relate to. You know, that's going to be the telltale sign right there. Like what's the story behind your brand? I read the book Start Something That Matters by Brian. Forgot his last name. I forgot his last name, but Start Something That Matters. He's the founder of Tom's Shoes. You know, the little cloth shoes that says Tom's on the back. And the story behind his shoes and how he got started, and why, if you buy a pair of shoes, uh, you've also donated a pair of shoes to some kids in the Philippines or something like that. It wasn't the shoes or the style of shoes or anything that went viral. It was the story that went viral, and that people bought into, right? And so if I know that poets and people are going to buy into the fact that poetry is valuable, is powerful, but also you can actually create an income and a lifestyle out of your art form, then I know they would also wear it as well. Especially, again, they've been already using the hashtag, right? So it's the story. What does Poet Life mean? And so I'll ask the question to poets, you know, what does your poet life look like, right? And then they'll have their own story, right? So they don't have to live off my story. They can live off their own story because they can relate to the actual reason why the poet life is the poet life.
Talking to Christoph gave us some insight on fulfilling a need with our products and what it looks like to create with intention. Join us next week as we'll be diving a little deeper into that topic as well with our special guests. Thank you for tuning in. This has been the Creator's Toolkit.